I know Timothy for longer than he probably remembers. I was going to the Maplewood Club a long time ago, and Timothy was always someone who you listened to and you went, I'm going to need some of whatever he has. Timothy, for those of you who haven't met him, he actually has, after we're done here and we go to lunch, he'll have a booth kind of set up by, or set up by our cafeteria where we'll have books, some other information and some other things that they'll be selling. But this is what I can tell you personally on a less business side and professional side. Timothy is a gift to people in recovery. He's taken what could have been a horrible journey and just made it into actually a huge act of service. Since I've known him from way back, he's always been involved with MADD. He's always been involved at his meetings. He's always been willing to be a speaker. I throw other situations where I've needed a speaker even short notice. I'll call Timothy. He's always available. And what I want to share with you about Timothy is the bottom line of everything he talks about is really generally about love and forgiveness. And he always represents it in a way that other people walk away with something that they didn't have before. And I'm really, really grateful that he would come again at this point and speak for us here. The other thing about Timothy is he's been a volunteer here at Second Sunday for years and years and years. And for us, we don't normally turn one of our volunteers into a speaker. But with him and his experience and his story and what he does, we feel it's really important that he gets a chance to come on our stage and share. So you won't get him for a small group facilitator today, because he's here to be our speaker. But I will tell you is after lunch, you can certainly take time to talk to him back at our lunchroom. Timothy, I don't know what else to say other than you've just been a gift to my recovery, and I'm hoping that you will bring something to yours today. With that, Timothy.
Good morning, everyone. How's my sound, Bill? Yes, great. All right. My name is Timothy. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And first things first, I would like to just open with a little prayer. Our Creator in heaven, I pray that thou make me an instrument of thy mercy and thy peace and help someone in this room today, even if it's only me. Amen. Amen. Right. First things first, there's one who has all power and it ain't you. But I am connected, just like everyone in this room. When I drove into Hazelden today, I felt that peace. And every time, the very first time I drove out here about 25, 26 years ago, I was actually driven back then. I literally felt like there was an umbrella of peace being held by God over this place. It was just, as soon as you come in, it's just, it's a shelter from the world. And it's just so peaceful, and that wasn't just my imagination, because I had never been here before, And it's a very palpable, powerful thing, and to this day it's still true. I drive in, and the world kind of disappears, I hope you had that feeling when you were driving in as well. Neurologists have said that you need to have some humor in your world every day. Find a reason to laugh. Find a reason to grab a moment of belly laughter if you can. If you can't, a chuckle will too. But it makes the brain healthy. And in that interest, I'm going to tell you a joke. It has to do with Al-Anon to some extent. I joined Al-Anon in May of 1991. I joined AA in August of 90. And because I was cleaning up messes before they happened, they said, you need Al-Anon? So it's like fixing the toilet paper rolls, oops, it's coming off the wrong direction, I turn it around. Silly things like that. But in both programs, resentment can just drive you down into the black hole to make everything that's good in your life disappear. So you have to be extremely careful about it. Some people get angry when they have resentment. Some go into depression. whatever it is. But unresolved grief ties so many of us down from a spiritual experience. It's absolutely imperative that we do the fourth and the fifth step. And you can't get to that unless you've done the first, second, and third step. But I was driven to the point of despair, and this is the joke, okay? There's some truth in every joke that's worth hearing. But what was happening is every time I got to know a woman that I was really interested in, I would sit down with her and I would steel myself for the opportunity, right? It's like, all right, this is the one, you know? And I get to that very moment and I say, all right, I'm going to say it. Can we be more than friends? And every time, without exception, I would always hear the same thing. I'm sorry, Timothy, I think of you just as a friend. That happened like 6 or 7 times, and I'm getting depressed, you know, and I'm feeling so down. One day I was thinking about just ending it. And I'm walking around downtown Minneapolis just in despair, and then I saw that there was these Jesus people out in the street. They all got their Bibles in their hands, and they're just beaming, right? Just full of vibrant life and happy, and they're approaching people with their Bibles, and they're saying, Jesus loves you, brother. Jesus loves you, sister. And I just was starting to feel the spark of life coming back into me. I started to feel hopeful again. I had some happiness, and one of the Jesus people that happened to have been a really cute woman approached me, and of course I wondered if this was the one. And I got all happy and stuff, right? And she came up with her Bible and she said, Jesus thinks of you as a friend. You know, I just thought life ain't fair, man. But the reason that we join Al-Anon is to find out who we are, and then to do that really important thing of being who we are. And you can't find out who you are without going through the fourth and the fifth step and examining all the painful parts of our lives so we can get it out of the way, so the sunlight of the Spirit can become vital. Even if we turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, which is what we do before we do the personal inventory, we still need to do that inner work. We carry that experience from the third step into our inner journey of discovering who we are. And after we discover who we are, good, bad, and ugly, then we release it completely. We turn our will and our lives over to the care of God in a meaningful way after we've touched all the painful parts. And we become entirely ready to let God remove all of our defects of character, which means you don't get to. It also means you don't have to. Turn it over and then humbly ask God to remove your shortcomings. And if your shortcomings are there after you've asked that they're removed, guess who needs them to stay? The one that you asked to remove them. It's not your timing, it's God's timing. Not everyone believes in God. You can do the good, orderly direction, G-O-D if you want to. We are an open program. Anyone can walk into our doors. And a lot of us come in agnostic anyway. And probably a lot of us remember having some struggles with letting go of all the stuff that is preventing us from falling in love with God and our fellow human beings. Love God with all your heart, love others as yourself, and you're golden. You know, everything that's worth having in life hangs on those 2 precepts. I have been doing this MADD speech for a long time. I've got a couple of people that have heard me here at MADD panels, but I want to go into some of that stuff for you because a lot of us haven't been able to attend a MADD panel. Anyone remember seeing this painting on the way down here? It's in the hallway on the way. And I just love that painting. And I just thought, this is what I want my life to look like. So I took that photograph and I contacted the gentleman who painted it and asked for his permission to use it. He didn't say no and he didn't say yes. So, you know, I don't know if I should really use it, so, but at least I asked them. I didn't just pirate his stuff. But I love that, who wouldn't want their life to look like that when they come into recovery? But you notice those ripples of the heart, they didn't happen by accident. It happened because he's doing something. It's an action program, We surrender what we're doing. You see him looking where he's going? Nope. He's just going. And I like that. So, here's the main message that I try to prevail on people at MADD audiences. If you want to stop drunk driving, fall in love with yourself and others, consciously. Why? Because if you love someone, you won't hurt them. And if you love yourself, you won't hurt yourself. So the solution is love. However, there's a paradox that's present in this situation, because with the number one killer of children who die in drunk driving tragedies in this country, guess who it is? That kills them. It's the parent. The parent is driving under the influence and kills their own child. The number one killer is the ones that love them the most. So how can it be true that if you love someone, you won't hurt them, and if you love yourself, you won't place yourself in harm's way by getting behind the wheel of a car and operating it under the influence? If that's true, how do you deal with the fact that parents are killing their own children, number one killer of kids, in drunk driving tragedies? Well, the consciousness of love disappears when we're under the influence. We do things that we would never do sober to the people we love, including ourselves. But when we have alcohol in our system, and my being a recovering alcoholic, I know a little bit about what it means to have alcohol want to destroy me, but keep me alive at the same time. It's like a parasite, It wants to keep you alive so it can stay alive. And until we kill our ego, it ain't going away, But how do we activate that love? How do we raise our consciousness to where we remember who we love? Alcoholics got to remove alcohol from your life. It's that simple. And you don't have to be an alcoholic to drive under the influence and kill someone. You don't even have to be drunk. You just have to make an alcohol-impaired decision, and you can get a lot of people in a lot of trouble. So, this is something that I learned from a MADD speaker when I first joined MADD, and she lost her son to an alcohol-impaired driver, and she said, "We forgive regardless of the temperature of our hearts." So I put it on the back of my business card. And she was in MADD and taught me that about losing her son. Corrie ten Boom was in a concentration camp in Germany, World War II, for hiding Jews. And she is the one that quote is drawn from. She's in a concentration camp. And she's saying, we forgive notwithstanding the temperature of our hearts. So it is really possible to forgive even the worst stuff in the world. And until we do, we won't have peace. And the peace that surpasses all understanding can preface our life, or it can follow our life. But if you change your life, you'll have to change your mind first, because it follows where you intend to go. I'm in MADD, but I'm not mad at anybody. I sometimes wish they would just change the name, because anger, being mad, is one of the most toxic emotions a human being can have. Wars are started over it. People destroy each other over it. It's oftentimes where our resentments go, and it just tears us down. So why would they want to call something mad? Well, if you lost your loved one, you'd be mad too. Most of us would be. However, at some point, we got to set that stuff aside, because if we don't, it's going to kill us. We lose marriages over someone being hit by a drunk driver. More marriages that fail over losing a son or a daughter to a drunk driving tragedy. And it's because of unresolved grief. They don't know where to go with it. And I wish we could call it maybe something like Lovers Against Impaired Driving. Thanks for laughing, because everyone wants to get laid. L-A-I-D. But I don't think that MADD would allow that transition, in the name. But, you gotta have a sense of humor, right? So to be in MADD, you have to be part of an exclusive membership. This t-shirt I bought at the Recovery Church many years ago. Pastor Joe Camp was selling it. I thought, this is my kind of church, man. It says, Shit Creek Canoe Club, been up and back, no paddle, survival, Anyone been on that road? Yeah, we've all been down that one. And, but the unresolved grief is really important. If we don't know what to do with our grief, here is a really great book by Melody Beatty, The Grief Club. She had lost her offspring and was just beside herself in grief, but rather than just sitting in it, she decided to do something with it. She wrote a book, knowing that if she helps others with their grief, it will help her with hers. Because when we help someone else, it keeps us alive. If you want a book to deal with grief, that's one I highly recommend. So who is Timothy Cameron? Well, I'm an alcoholic, right? What is an alcoholic? An alcoholic is someone who has an allergy to alcohol. And me, my allergy is when I drink, I break out in handcuffs. An old age joke, but it's literally true in my case. A lot of people just say it as a joke, but I did 13 and a half years in prison. 2 major incarcerations, several minor incarcerations. I was a slow learner, right? But I love this picture of this woman standing at the, what do they call it when you're? Lineup. I wondered if someone knew that. But I thought it was a lineup, but that's not a lineup. A lineup is where you have 5 or 6 people, and then they have people that look like you, and then you hope they pick that other person. That's a lineup. But anyway, they just take your mugshot and they show a tall yard, and this woman is like freaking out. It's like, how did I end up here? And all the hands on her face and her hands on the head and all this stuff. It's like all of her thought processes are going from the different parts of her lives. This is impossible. How the heck did I end up here? That's what we go through over and over and over. How did I get so sick? Why am I doing these things to myself, but we can't stop? I kept going back over and over and over again. And it was an endless cycle. I was doing life in the installment plan. And when I sobered up, it put the kibosh on all that. So the bad old days was jail, and by the way, I'm a cat lover, so I'm not picking on cats. I thought it was a great photograph, cat passed out, beer bottle, cigarette in his mouth. Looking pretty classy, and back in the day when I was drinking, I'd wake up in the morning, before I'd open my eyes, I'd go, throw out one arm. And if it hit concrete, it's going to be a bad day. And if it hit carpet, it's going to be a good day. And anyone ever woke up in jail? How in the hell did I get there? Yeah, a couple of us, right? So, and then there's, of course, transformation. There's another painting by the same gentleman that did the heart, growing the heart. That's in the hallway as well. People standing in front of this doorway that is in the shape of a heart, and there's a handle on there. And people in recovery are facing the solution, going toward the sunlight of the Spirit. You open that door and walk through, but you walk through together because there's enough heart always to bring everyone to it. It's a neat program. No one goes home until everybody goes home. We don't exclude anyone, no matter what. Period, end of story. The only requirement in AA, at least, is the desire to stop drinking. You don't even have to be an alcoholic to be there. You just have to have a desire to stop drinking. And then a life of loving service, which is what I pretend to do on good days now. I have cancer and I'm in a lot of pain, and I thought I had like some spiritual, maturity, some emotional maturity. I'd worked a lot of things out in my life. And then when I'm in physical pain, is then I find out what a selfish little snob I can be. Like, what? You're even in the program? Really? The selfish little whiner? And then I gotta go, oh no, this is just a speed bump. And so, maybe I'll be healed of it, maybe I won't, but I'm trying to picture the healthiest Timothy as possible. And, God's will, not mine, but let's picture me as healthy and whole, not as someone who's sick. And when we look deeper at each other in that sacred way, when they walk in the doors, that's the starting point of healing. Not seeing someone as damaged goods, but seeing them deeper than that. In the Mayan tradition, they have a phrase that's called in Lakesh, which loosely translated means, I'm you, you're me. And more narrowly translated means, I am your other you. You are my other me. We are one. That's the we program. So we see ourselves in others, and we see others in ourselves. We're coming from a place of compassion, nothing less. And then when I was working at Fellowship Club, I got a picture by the sign in the hallway, and I cut off half of my face because I thought it looked cooler. But I've lived by that prayer big time, 100 times a day sometimes. Earlier on, 100 times a minute, it seemed. But here is the woman that brought me into MADD. Mary Jo Robinson came to our recovery group. I love it that I can say this part. This part I can say in MADD, and I try and avoid the alcoholic and all that, and where I go. But I was at the Stillwater Club. I was sober for 90 days. And they had slated Mary Jo Robinson to come speak to our group, right? And it had underneath her name, MADD member. And I thought, oh my God, what idiot would invite a MADD speaker to a recovery celebration event? Did somebody relapse? Were they hitting the bong and then going to the phone book and just leaving? I was experiencing that tape recording in my head that played about MADD. And I had pictured her as a certain kind of a way. I had removed any possibility that she was going to say something good. I was only stuck in this negative part. And I was experiencing a thing called contempt prior to investigation, otherwise known as prejudice. And having never heard her utter a single word, how can I have an opinion about what she's going to say? But when she came into the room and introduced herself, she said, hi, I'm Mary Jo Robinson, a sober alcoholic by the grace of God, 21 or 22 years at that time. I thought, oh my gosh, she's one of us. Of course she's being invited here. And I just thought I was going to hear some god-awful story about losing a loved one and hearing what that tragedy looked like, and I'm going to be just pulled down to that painful place that I didn't want to experience for a lot of personal reasons, but I wasn't consciously aware of that yet, And this woman's story that she told that day changed my life, 100% changed my life. I took a whole new direction, and it's not one that I even guessed was possible. The part of her story, she did talk about losing her son, Mark. He was killed by an alcohol-impaired driver when he was sober for 10 years. He had devoted his life to helping other alcoholics get sober and stay sober. He was given away what he was so freely given. And now he's killed by an alcohol-impaired driver. And he was killed instantly, according to Mary Jo's story. She said, I chose to believe that. That's what the EMT said. And she wasn't sure it was true, but it gave her some comfort. And but the part of her story that just nailed my heart, it just opened and activated my heart, was how she conducted herself in the courtroom at the time of the sentencing for this young man. She's standing on one side of the courtroom, he's standing on the other side of the courtroom, behind their respective lecterns, and she's looking at this guy, and he has to listen to her give a victim impact statement, right? But she wanted him to look at her when she gave the statement. So she asked him, would you please look at me when I give you my victim impact statement? And the guy was just looking at the floor of the courtroom. So she asked a second time, would you please look at me when I give you my statement? Again, he didn't look at her. And the reason I think he didn't look at her is because he's in despair over this. It's like, how can you look in the eyes of a mom? You know you killed her son. That would probably be one of the hardest things a person can do, right? I mean, a lot of us drove under the influence, but if you would have hit and killed someone, you might be in a situation where you're thinking about killing yourself because you can't live with the idea that you killed someone's child, right? And if somebody killed your child driving under the influence, suicide might not cross your mind, but homicide might, you know? So we're talking about life and death. And with her words, she's holding the keys to life and death for this young man. He had just graduated from college, went to a kegger, stopped drinking at 1 in the morning, got on the road at 5:15, and at 5:30 collided head-on with Mark on Highway 94 in St. Paul. He was going the wrong direction down 94, and Mark didn't see it coming. And he's gone. And now Mary Jo wants to give her victim impact statement, and this guy can't look at her. So Mary Jo broke a rule. She came out from behind her lectern and started crossing the courtroom. And in the center of a courtroom, because of an adversarial system, you have a visible line that you're never supposed to cross, neither physically or metaphorically, because it can screw up the case. And not only that, they might worry about you're going to go over and hurt this guy, right? Well, Judge Campbell, which officiated the courtroom, did not prevent Mary Jo from approaching the young man. She crossed that invisible line, and he didn't signal the bailiffs, like, get the crazy bitch out of the courtroom, you know, or any of that stuff. He watched her with great peace in his heart because he had been in chambers with her. He knew the direction that she was going. And they had discussions about it. But the young man's mom is sitting probably in this position to support him. And when Mary Jo was approaching his lectern, she looked over and saw his mom, and their eyes connected. And when their eyes connected, Mary Jo said, this woman had daggers in her eyes. Like, don't you hurt my son. He knows what he's done. He doesn't need more because of you. And Mary Jo's a mom too, you know, and she had compassion for where she was coming from, but she can't stop and say, well, here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to do. So she just approached the young man who killed her son and asked him again, would you please look at me when I give you my victim impact statement? And I'm going to move this lectern to the center of this room, like I'm her and you are the offender, right? Mary Jo asked him to look at her, and he's still looking at the ground. He couldn't bring himself to do it, so she raised her hand to his chin, placed it underneath his chin, and asked his permission one more time. She said, son, would you please look at me when I give you my victim impact statement? And this time, he allowed it. And she gently and respectfully and lovingly rolls up his face, and as soon as their eyes touch, she said, I want you to know something. I want you to know that I love you and I forgive you for killing my son. I love you and I forgive you for killing my son. And those powerful words was not what he expected to hear. And he broke down crying, of course. He had holy water coming out of his face, if you will. And as soon as he started crying, she stepped behind his lectern, placed her arms around him in a big hug, holding him while he cried uncontrollably in her arms, and kept repeating those healing words of love. I love you, I forgive you. I love you, I forgive you, over and over until he stopped sobbing. And she could have killed him with a few words, but instead she said that. And if he would have been on suicide's door, she walked up to him and says, I think you're a scumbag. You know, you're a dirtbag. Why don't you just go back to your cell and kill yourself, because you don't deserve to be on planet Earth. You killed my son. He's gone. You should be gone too. And it's possible if he was on death's door, man, because of wanting to commit suicide, because he's so full of grief, he might have went back to his cell and killed himself. That's a possibility, you know. We never know what we're going to do when these things happen in our life. We have no idea what our lives are going to look like, you know. But instead of installing something really painful to carry for the rest of his life beyond what he's already obviously dealing with, she put those words there. Why did she do that? I asked her later, how can you do that? I never thought I'd hear a mom say that. And she said, well, one, I'm a Christian. Two, I'm in recovery. And she was a Christian counselor at that time, you know, and she was running around preaching love and forgiveness. And she said, now that life is really tough, what am I going to do? Am I going to forgive? Or am I going to tear this guy a new one? You know? She said, I got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. There was a part of her that wanted to lambaste him, but she knew she couldn't do that. And anyone can forgive. You don't have to be a Christian to forgive. You don't have to be in recovery to forgive. Anyone can forgive. You know, it's a human potential, but when we do it, it makes our lives better. Sometimes the person that we're trying to forgive, sometimes we're just trying, we realize that once that act happens and we forgive them, even if they don't deserve it, even if they don't want it and they care less, as soon as we do it, we feel better. Our lives get better. We deserve peace, and that's why we deserve do that. We deserve a better life. In an Al-Anon, they say a person is as happy as they make up their mind to be. And Mary Jo proved that she was going to go deeper than the offense that required the presence of the forgiveness. Forgiveness is more powerful than the offense, which is required to bring forgiveness into action. You can't have forgiveness without an offense. So thank God for the offense. Give thanks in all things, not just the easy stuff. You know, we're commanded to do that if you happen to be, you know, a Christian. And Mary Jo, stepped forward. She lived that. And I think she helped this guy get well. Seriously. He put his life back together, you know. He had never driven under the influence again. They keep records of people, MADD, that injure and kill. So they did some research and found out, I don't know how they found out, he had gotten married, he had several children, holding down a good job. So he had some measure of success. And there's a lot of measurements of success. Those are just some of them. But no more offenses. He wasn't an alcoholic. He was just a problem drinker. The problem was he was behind the wheel and operating it under the influence. You don't have to be an alcoholic to kill someone. And so Mary Jo's story of love and forgiveness nailed me, and I just shared with her something I never thought I'd tell anyone. I didn't even say anything to anyone in AA. I said, Mary Jo, I drove under the influence and I killed someone's child. And I gave her a little bit of detail, and she said, oh my gosh, Timothy, I need you and Matt to come down and speak with us. And I said, oh my gosh, Mary Jo, that's not going to happen. I'm not a speaker. Why would I want to tell somebody about the god-awful thing that I did? And then let them think that I'm a dirtbag, you know? And now what am I doing? I'm playing that contempt prior to investigation. I had never spoken before, but I just already know how you're going to react to me. The truth is, that's how I was reacting to myself. 99% of my problems in life are of my own making. The prison we construct in our own mind is always more secure than the physical prison that humans can construct to keep us locked up. I've seen people in prison that were more free than a lot of us out here. You know, it's an inside job. We hold the keys, and for me, there is one who has all power even in prison. God came to me and did miracles and helped me. I remember when the associate warden had to hear me talk about God one day. He was mad, you know. And I said, no, God's got this deal, man. You don't have any power over me. And he slammed his hand down on his desk. Bam! And he said, in this prison, I'm God. Well, 2 years later, God had a heart attack. And I didn't wish that on him, of course, you know. I just thought it was ironic, you know. And so, thank you, Mary Jo, for challenging me that day to come into MADD, and I still objected, and she said, Timothy, when we're asked to do service work in this program, guess what? You don't get to say no. So you can zip that one. And secondly, what if your story could help somebody not do what you did? What if you're going to help an alcoholic that is still suffering that's in that audience? Might only be 1 out of 5 people, maybe less. But you might be helping a still suffering alcoholic, and plus it might just help someone anyway. So who are you to deny people your story? Because you're embarrassed, you know? And I said, I get that, Mary Jo. I felt trapped. It's like I was nowhere to run with those arguments. And I said, I just don't think I can do it. I'm not a speaker. And she said, come to a MADD panel, check it out, see what you think. I went to a MADD panel just to listen, and I saw so many synchronicities between those speakers that paralleled my life in so many personal ways. It would have been impossible to construct that situation. Somebody else was doing it. And that one was God, I think. I saw the writing on the wall, that this is where God needed me. This is my work. This is my mission. So MADD became my mission. And it was really hard to speak at first. You know, I spoke for a minute or something, sat on sobbing. And over time, you know, things got a little better in that department. But there was something that was happening that I didn't expect. I wanted to commit suicide after speaking. I had talked at a MADD panel, and while I'm at the MADD panel, I felt better, you know. It appeared like people were appreciating it. They'd come up afterwards and say thanks. The MADD team was there, we're like family, and most of them were supportive of me, even though I was an offender. There was a couple that wouldn't speak on the same panel with me because they were still mad, you know, and that was okay. But I needed to do what I was doing, regardless of how other people received it, that couldn't handle it. And they have a right to be exactly where they're at. No one does grief the same way. We don't have a right to judge anyone for their journey. And just be the best people we can be and leave the outcome up to God, or at least that's what Mary Jo taught me. And but I didn't expect to want to commit suicide afterwards. I mean, I'd be driving my car home at night, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done to not crash my car into a bridge at 100 miles an hour or a tree and kill myself, to prove to you people how sorry I was for killing somebody's child. And there's been a couple of struggles I've had in sobriety that probably brought me more pain, like losing the alcoholic that was in my life to drinking. She died from drinking. That was a tough period. But thanks to God and the fellowship of Al-Anon, I didn't have to die along with her. And I wanted to die. That was a tougher period than even the reaction to killing someone's child. And here's the child I killed. Same name as me. Timothy killed Timothy on August 15th, 1977. I had 3.5 beers. I wasn't drunk. I was just alcohol impaired. I was in a stolen car. I was a young person. That's what I did back in those days. I would joyride in stolen cars. And I had ran away from treatment. They were looking for me, locked me up for failing treatment because of running away. And had I been successful at treatment and was humble enough to go through that process, it would have saved Timmy and it would have saved me a lifetime of grief. But instead, I ran away. And Timmy ended up dead. Timmy's mom, Sherry, is in the lower left-hand corner. She's the one that actually sent me these photographs. Today, she and I are friends, by the way. She has forgiven me. And she even told me something that Mary Jo told her offender. She said, I love you and I forgive you. And I never thought I'd hear those words because I tried so hard to make at least indirect amends. You know, you can't bring Timmy back. He's gone. I can't. If I could bring him back, then it'd be direct amends. But to her, I can at least try to make some amends. And she didn't want to hear from me. And it wasn't until maybe 20 years of sobriety, somewhere in there, I got a call from MADD that she had contacted them and she wanted to talk to me. We ended up becoming friends, and what flipped the switch of being willing to talk to me is because her daughter drove under the influence of alcohol in the same town that I killed little Timmy in, Marshall, Missouri. She didn't live there. She was partying. She got into a crash, injured someone, and it could have killed someone. And that's where Sherry had a light bulb moment. She says, oh my God, my own daughter could have killed someone. And then she wondered about me. She said, I wonder if Timothy has a mom. I wonder if he has anyone who loves him. What is his family life like? You know, she saw me as a potential human being for the first time since this had happened, you know. Took a long time to get there, but that's why she reached out. And it was shocking to me to actually talk to her. And then the day came where she sent me a message and she said, Timothy, I mean this. I believe that you are one of the best things that has ever happened to me in my life. Who would have thought that a mom could say that? I had a hard time wrapping my mind around it, but it would have been dishonorable to consider her just a manipulative person. People don't do that. She meant it. She understood the power of forgiveness, the miracle of forgiveness. You know, she was a person that happened to be Catholic, and my perception of Catholicism is that no one does forgiveness like a Catholic. If you're Catholic, cheers to you. I'm not Catholic, but Buddhists do pretty darn good too, by the way. It's no Bach thing. And Mary Jo is Catholic, and I've just run into so many Catholics that have been supportive of prison ministry that I've spoken for and things like that, you know. And they're a good lot. I got nothing bad to say about Catholics. And so now she tells the story, our story she calls it, and she goes to her churches and her various ministries that she's involved in, right? So she says, yeah, I tell our story. I thought, wow, she's telling our story, you know. And I heard a woman in Al-Anon speak at Gopher State one year. She was in Al-Anon like 38, 40 years. Her husband was in AA like 35. You know, they always beat us in recovery, you know. Well, not always, of course, but I'm just being humorous. But, and after she spoke about some really powerful stuff, I talked to her and I said, well, you know, I drove under the influence and I killed someone. I was playing that little tape out for her. And I said, I hit Sherry and I ran over a baby in a baby stroller, you know. And she and Sherry and little Timmy are my victims. And she stopped me right there. And she said, stop. Nope, not true. You just said something that's half true. Timmy is your victim. Sherry is not your victim. We can get well regardless of if the alcoholic is drinking or not. Regardless of what they've done in our lives, we can get well. Burn it into the consciousness of every human being, is what the Big Book talks about, is that we can get well regardless of anyone. And I don't think I started to truly grasp that without the fourth and the fifth step in the work that I did in Al-Anon. Al-Anon helped me understand the program of AA in a way that had been a mystery to me before I joined and started working that program. If you're working with another alcoholic, even as an AA sponsor, you have an alcoholic in your life, right? There's your requirement for membership. You can attend Al-Anon. Just don't talk about AA in there, you know. And, it's just a separation for programs. Some programs allow you to do it, some meetings allow you to do it, but I usually omit anything to do with AA. It's an outside issue. But Sherry sent me these pictures, and look at little Timmy, happy baby, right? And the woman in the upper right-hand corner, Susan, was out for a walk that day. Susan is little Timmy's auntie, and as I was approaching both she and Susan walking together, and Sherry pushing a baby stroller, I hit Sherry, and just before I hit her, I said, God, please don't let me hit him, but it was too late. And Susan did run to safety, but then when I hit Sherry, she went up into the air, back down, I ran over her legs, and then I heard that baby go underneath the car. I guarantee you, that's not a sound you'll ever forget, you know. And when you watch a movie of a cop chasing a crook, and you see the car go airborne in this exciting chase scene, and the chassis drags the asphalt, and sparks go flying, and CG stuff is going on, and it's very exciting to you because you still have your innocence. But after I sobered up and I first heard that sound, it instantly brought me back to that time and place where I heard that stroller underneath my car. And after I sobered up, I didn't have anywhere to run. I couldn't run to a bottle to find God in the bottom of the bottle. I couldn't run to a drug to hide and mask my pain. I had to feel everything. And I remember driving and seeing a woman pushing a baby stroller, and I just broke down sobbing. I had to pull over right away because I couldn't see the road through my tears, you know. And after speaking for MADD and wanting to kill myself, this is getting to be too much, and I finally told Mary Jo, I was hoping it'd just go away, right? But the feeling wasn't going away. And I told Mary Jo, I said, Mary Jo, I can't speak for MADD anymore. I can't do this. This is killing me, man. I didn't join MADD and want to commit suicide. I just want to kill myself, and I'm done. And she said, Timothy, you're in a really unhealthy place. She knew my story very intimately. And she said, you are suffering from low self-esteem. She knew I'd been sexually abused as a child, and I felt like I was worthless to humanity as a result of some of that. I had a lot of different breaks in confidence. I even had a psychologist that was supposed to help me that was, there's no children here. He was masturbating in the room while asking me questions about my penis and things like that. And this guy's there to help me, but he's like betraying that trust. So I didn't trust anyone. By the time I got 18, I had seen so much, I just tried to turn all that off. And it wasn't until I sobered up that I started to do something about that trust. And that was the third step. I don't have to trust people. I just have to trust God. And then start doing that work, right? And it's none of my business what you think of me, but take that to the next level. It's also none of my business what I think of me. The only thing that matters is what God thinks of me. If I can connect with that power, that divine intelligence, it's going to change the way I view everything in my life. Even this. But it took a while. And when Mary Jo said I'm suffering from low self-esteem, she told me you're walking with the enemy, and the enemy is you. She gave me a project. She said, I want you to do some mirror therapy, which probably some of us know what that is, but for those that don't, we walk up to a mirror every morning. Very first thing, before you do anything else, Mary Jo said, you don't pee, you don't smoke, no coffee, no nothing, straight to the mirror. You look at yourself in the mirror, in the eyes, say your name out loud, point at yourself and say, Timothy, I love you. And you do that every day until you meet him. And I thought it sounded ridiculous. It sounded like pop psychology or something to me, but I respected her, so I agreed to try it. And the next day I said, Timothy, with obligation, I love you. And then I spewed expletives about how much I hated myself. You killed someone's child, you're a dirtbag. How could you possibly be of worth to anyone? There's something wrong with you. You're damaged goods. Somebody knows that you've been abused, then you might bring some of those issues of no trust into a sexual relationship, and And that might be hard on them. It's like, I'm never going to be any good to myself or anybody else. Woe is me, you know. And, but I realized after I was just dogging myself for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I don't know how long it went on, but I thought I wouldn't talk to somebody else like this. I would never say this to somebody else, but I'm doing it to myself. And I decided to do this work. So every day for 8 years, I looked in the mirror and I said, Timothy, I love you. And then one day I meant it. And I was shocked. I couldn't see the ex-convict in the mirror anymore. I couldn't see the abused person. I couldn't see the racist that I had been in prison. I couldn't see any of the stuff that had been wrong with my life. It had disappeared. And I got closer and I looked as close as I could. I thought, what is this real? And I don't, maybe it's my imagination, but I thought I saw a mantle of peace around my face that looked like a white mist. And there was nothing but love. And I, for the first time, loved myself. And guess what happened? I got all happy and shit. I didn't like go dancing down the street and stuff and start singing every day or something, you know, and that would have been good if I did, but, you know, I didn't. And so I had to work with that emotion and keep practicing it, but eventually it became the pattern. But that moment that happened, I never wanted to kill myself after speaking for MADD again. That disappeared. And then I had to do deeper work for the other areas of love that I hadn't really accessed yet, you know. And when you're in a lot of physical pain, you get to find out more about that. Where I'm at now, it's like, oh yeah, this is really hard. And you know, in the native tradition, when they want to tell the truth as a speaker, they bring up the eagle feather, because you can't lie in the presence of the eagle feather. Well, my eagle feather is my girlfriend. She's here, so it's like she's going to see through the BS in a heartbeat. I might even hear something later. It's like, well, yeah, well, what about? I don't know. You know, do the best I can with what I got, right? So, but she's my eagle feather, you know, and I feel more sacred around her, not because it's an outside-in thing, but because of the alignment, the connection that we made, and the universe, God, whatever it is always conspiring to give each and every one of us in this room the best life possible at all moments and at all times. And if you ever read the book, The Alchemist, that's one of the things he taught in that book. It's the one thing that really stuck with me. So that divine connection, you know, I've made divine connections with some friends here. I helped marry them up on the North Shore. A friend of mine that's a PO, I won't point him out in this room. We made a divine connection. He used to be one of my supervisors at 180 degrees, and we ended up becoming friends. And there's just so many people in my life that are in this room today that I've made that divine connection with. Now, you don't have to know somebody personally to have a divine connection. We are all here today because of a divine connection. We are converging at the same place. And there's something that you're going to hear today that is aligning with you in a synchronistic way. And if you look at your synchronicities in life, you're going to understand the reason you're in any situation, because you're looking for the higher message. And so we all have our divine appointments, right? We're not all in the same boat, right, Fred? But we're all on the same ship, right? So we're not exclusive. Our lives look all different, but yet we're on the same planet, and we need to get along. First, God throws a pebble, and then God throws a brick. You ever operate that machine here? That's the Al-Anon, I'm not working the program picture. And a lot of us have done that. The self-ass-kicking machine is called what it is. You know, but those are still pebbles, and they're self-induced, and we can stop that anytime we want. But if we don't know we're doing it, we're going to blame the outside world because we've got our back turned to the boots that are kicking us, and we believe that it's something to do with the external world, but we're actually running our perception. There is no such thing as reality. There's only perception. It's not what happens to us that matters, it's how we perceive it, right? And Buddha said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's about that. It's like I'm in charge of what I say, you're in charge of what you hear. If you like something I'm saying, don't give me any credit. It's your perception. If you've surrendered your perception to the will of God, you're going to hear what you're supposed to hear. And if you don't like something I say, guess what? I ain't your problem. You know? I'm not your solution. I'm not your problem. This ain't about me. And in fact, if you remember me more than you remember the message that I try to prevail upon you today, I've done you a great disservice. This is not about me. When I opened this deal, it was with prayer, God help me be an instrument of your mercy and peace and help someone in this room today. It's not all about me. And then, of course, the brick. See the guy reaching for the bottle? That's the alcoholic one. And the rat is waiting for us to go after, and he's standing there celebrating, right? You know. And but I've been there so many times. I've taken that brick. And Oprah said, first God fills a pebble, and then God fills a brick. Sorry, I like Oprah. But I still like a quote. And she also said, make your wounds your wisdom, which is part of the title of the speech. Here's a little Timmy quilt that they made for me in MADD. And they have like these huge panel of quilts that they make for everyone. If you lost someone, they'd ask you what you want your quilt to look like. Do you want a picture of somebody there? They didn't have any photographs of little Timmy at that time. So we just put a lamb dancing and on there. And the words came straight out of my heart. I said, little Timmy is looking down from heaven. Those in heaven see the heart, see mine. And then, you know, pictures of she and her husband. And their marriage didn't endure, by the way. She's remarried and she's got a good life now. There's my mugshot, another brick. But of course, I'm more than my mugshot. And a friend of mine started an organization that is called We Are All Criminals. And part of that website interviews people that have had crimes that they didn't get busted for. And they anonymously say what they did, you know. And had they been busted, they wouldn't be a judge today. They wouldn't be a cop today. They wouldn't be an HR supervisor. They wouldn't be a CEO of companies. There's all these things. We Are All Criminals. Emily Baxter is the one that started it. And but she also interviewed people that were ex-convicts or people that have been in jail, and anonymously interviewed them about what they did and how they can't get jobs now, how difficult it is as a result of the consequences that attended to the crimes that were committed. And even if you've forgiven yourself and you love yourself, doesn't mean the world will, you know. And when Hazelden hired me as an employee, that was a very powerful day for me, because I felt like I was moving forward, and I felt very blessed. But yeah, I am more than my mugshot. And, you know, the chief prison psychiatrist at Oak Park Heights Prison, which is one of the prisons I've been in, Stillwater is just not too far away. I was also in that prison. But because of the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to see my file. He had to be sitting there when I did it. But in the file it said, it is a foregone conclusion that Timothy Cameron will spend the rest of his life in prison. And, you know, you can always tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them much, you know. You tell them they can't get well, they might actually get well, you know, just to fight you. And who knows, that's maybe what he's thinking, but I don't think so. He wrote it in there, he seriously meant it. He had no reason to think that my life would go anywhere. And then when I filed for a pardon with the state of Minnesota, the governor just took one look at my crimes and said, you've done nothing but destroy lives. I'm not granting you a pardon. And I was frozen in just shame and terror and fear and whatever else. For a moment, I couldn't speak. He didn't give a chance for my witnesses to speak or anything like that, which is all fine, but he didn't understand. If, you know, they say that we didn't have a drinking problem, that we had a thinking problem. And if he went through the things in his life that I did, he might not have been governor, right? He didn't understand that, though. And you know, the day that I got all happy and stuff from doing that work, looking in the mirror and saying I love you every day, I ran down to the Maplewood Club afterwards to share my joy with the people that were outside of the club waiting for the meeting to start. And they're all out having fun. And I stopped in the middle of the pavilion. Sorry, I do say a couple of cuss words during my speech, but you know, this is exactly what I said at the time. I ran to the middle of that pavilion, I raised my voice, and I said, check out this shit! You guys gonna love this shit! And they stopped what they were doing, you know, and looked over at me, and dang, what's wrong with dude, you know? And I said, this morning I looked in the mirror and I said, Timothy, I love you. And I meant it. I meant it. Probably sounded more like a Joel Osteen commercial than anything. And I'll never forget this one woman, the way she reacted to it. She took a big hit off of her cigarette. You know, when someone separated themselves from you somehow, she's kind of like looking over her shoulder toward me like this. Didn't even face me, you know, really. Took a big hit off of her cigarette, blew a plume of smoke up in the air, and I clearly remember her saying, what? Are you going to kiss yourself too? Well, no, I wasn't going to kiss myself too. I wasn't mad at her. There was nothing to forgive. She didn't know better. Why would I be mad at her? Forgive her, she doesn't know what she's doing. Forgive the governor, he didn't know what he was doing. The chief prison psychiatrist, it doesn't matter what he thinks, you know. He didn't know about AA, he didn't know I'd ever sober up and all these things. They don't know any better. They are spotless. They have no idea. And to this woman's credit, you know, a couple of years later she approached me and said, oh yeah, you remember when I said, oh yeah, I remember. She said, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. You know, it's like, she did that for herself. I totally pretty much didn't think about it anymore other than to tell a story as an ad maybe or something, you know. And I thought, yes, she got it. And so I am more than my mugshot, and there's something I want you to hold on to this idea, is that none of us in this room should ever believe a story that doesn't empower us. That doesn't make you stronger, that doesn't empower you, you need to evict that from your consciousness. Never believe any story, especially the one that you tell yourself, because your perception is in charge of that story. Don't buy it. Only believe the ones that you want to think about that empower you. Nietzsche said, if it doesn't kill us, it only makes us stronger. Well, Nietzsche was an atheist. He didn't know there was a God. Even if it kills you, it still makes you stronger. So Nietzsche's up there in heaven now looking down saying, yeah, maybe. I don't know what his personal heaven looks like, but C.S. Lewis said that the door to hell is only open from the inside. It's an inside job. You have to let yourself out. That self-imposed prison. Do it now. Don't wait until you have a near-death experience or something and you're going to see the light and they send you back and say, make it all about. There was the bloodiest 47 acres in America where I did time for killing little Timmy, and I pled guilty, and I called this another brick. It's one of the worst prisons in the country, in the history of our country. Not a fun place to be at. And I pled guilty because I saw the photographs of the stroller with the blood on it, and I just knew there was no way in the world I could bring this mom into a trial to re-experience losing her loved one again. So I pled guilty, and I served 5 years, 10 months, and 1 day in this prison, and that's where I became racist. Started a racist gang there, and started a lot of trouble with the system, and everybody. It's not a happy person to be around. No one comes out of prison the way they went in. That's one of the rules. Here's when I got out of Stillwater Prison on 8/17/90. We got the Aryan Nation symbol there that I used to be part of. I was a Church of Jesus Christ Christian. I wasn't the Aryan Nation side. But what's the difference, right? You know, and I was showing, yeah, you guys ain't done nothing to change me. You know, guess what I was going to do? I was going to join a militant organization for the violent overthrow of the United States government, or I was going to go to Ireland and join the IRA and kill people over there. Somebody's dying. And on August 16th, I'm looking at the guys in prison, and I'm thinking, you know, if I got to come back to prison again, I can't do it anymore. I've done too much time. This is just, if I can't do it. If I ever come back here again, and these are the words I literally thought, and I meant it, you know. I was looking at this one guy, and my anger that I had for him, and I just thought, if I have to come back, I was so spiritually bankrupt, my life had become so miserable. I thought, if I have to come back, I'm going to plant a piece of steel in somebody's chest if they so much as look at me sideways. Somebody's dying. It's either that or I'm going to force them to plant a piece of steel in my chest, but somebody's dying. That's how bad I was. And that's how much I needed recovery. And they made me sign a document that I will not drink, and if I get caught drinking, we're going back to prison. But I wanted to prove that I'm not an alcoholic, even though I did sober up on the 19th, and found out that I know I'm somebody because God don't make no drunk, that's up in the Stillwater Club, but on the 18th I drank. When I drank alcoholically, and I had a miracle happen in my life, the way I behaved that night, and I always got arrested. And I didn't get arrested this night. Excuse me. Try as I might, I couldn't get arrested. No bouncers, no fights in the bar outside of the parking lot or anything like that, you know. And I really tried so hard to get in fights, and no one would fight me. They just shook their head and walked away and said, "Dude's an idiot," you know. And I couldn't get in trouble. I literally felt like I was walking through the field of the enemies of my life that I created for myself, and I couldn't get in trouble. And then when the bars closed in Minnesota, I got mad and I caught a cab to Wisconsin and drank for the last, 40 minutes or something, because it was right across the bridge from Stillwater. I just drank in every bar in Stillwater. They got guards that drink in Stillwater, right? If one of them would have saw and reported me, I'd have went back to prison. But after drinking in Wisconsin, I went back to my apartment, was sicker than I'd ever been, and at 3:30 in the morning, I realized for the first time that I was an alcoholic. I got honest for the first time. And I already knew my life was unmanageable, never cared, but I just never thought I was powerless. Now I knew I was. And then I did step 2. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Then I did step 3. I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, all at 3:30 in the morning, August 19th of 90. And I started attending meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's where I got sober. You sell these medallions up in Serenity Books. They will stamp your sober date on it if you want one. And these are the people that I made friends with in MADD. Even a cop standing next to me smiling, and he wrote me a reference for the pardon, and which the governor never read, He didn't read one thing that I did right, and that's okay, because it actually serves me now. It made me stronger, not weaker. It was hard for the first few days, so I was kind of, but I got over it. God allows U-turns. I love that, And the people in the upper center, the guy in green, Mark, Mary Jo's son that was killed, that's his brother. And he speaks for MADD. The woman with my arm around, her husband was killed by a drunk driver. We're friends. This guy in the upper right, he and his friends were driving under the influence of alcohol and pot, crashed, and now he's paraplegic for about 30 years. He and I are friends. The woman in the middle bottom here, her son was killed by an alcohol-impaired driver. We spoke for years, maybe 10 years together frequently. She and I are friends. People that have had these horrible tragedies became friends with me. That's what service work does. They get to see the offender as a human being, and it takes time. This picture here, her son was killed. We just got done speaking at a MADD panel. That's when I first joined MADD. I had darker hair and more hair. And this woman was, her daughter was hit by a drunk driver, and when she went into a hospital room and didn't recognize her own daughter, and when she realized it was actually her, she said if the guy who hit Chris would have been in that room at that moment, she had a double-barrel shotgun, she'd have pulled both triggers with no hesitation. But after we were together speaking on panels for about 3, maybe 4 years, don't know how long it was, in a MADD panel, she told the audience, she said, the guy that hit Chris, I wanted to hurt him so bad for so long, but I no longer feel that way. Why? Because of him. Turned around and pointed right at me. She said, I got to know this guy over time, and at first I thought he was full of it. I didn't want anything to do with him, but he came and asked to do work with MADD. I put him to work, and I gave him, quote, every shit job I could find for a year trying to get rid of him. And I thought, shit job? Remember getting any shit jobs? You know, and I mean, yeah, I was cleaning toilets and stealing a couple thousand envelopes and doing all this stuff, you know, but when you're in a service mode and it's about love, you don't notice that stuff, right? I didn't know what she gave you. And then she said, but then he kept sticking around and it slowly changed my heart, she said. And now I no longer feel that way about the guy who hit Chris. She said, I not only would trust Timothy with my life, I would trust Timothy with the life of my daughter. Service work can do so much to heal our world, even if we've done something as horrible as I did. And there we go. And I don't know why I put that close up there, but I did. Here's the book I wrote, The Little Book of Miracles, Stories from the Incomplete Skeptic. It just simply relates a lot of the miracles that transpired in my life. And really, God is about love. God is love, and we're commanded to love one another. That's what this is about. And I put a picture of myself there when I was working at HCYF, sitting at the desk one day, and whited out a bunch of stuff in the background that had some names of clients and stuff, and I used that picture. The reason I did that is because I know when I buy a book, I want to see what the person looks like. You know, again, the eyes are the windows to the soul. What does this person mean to me as I look at this person? And that's why I put it there. It's not like an exercise in narcissism. Like the lady thought you had to kiss yourself. It's not like that. And so that's the book, and I'll be selling that up by the cafeteria later today. And here's your assignment. I got the mirror therapy. I'm not asking you to do this one. Here's your assignment. It's a 1-year grand 12-month experiment, right? Every day for 1 year, I'm going to ask you to do this. Journal it if you can. You know, the people that are in recovery that journal, they have the strongest recovery. That's what I've noticed. And that's just my opinion. There's a lot of ways to do this, not a judgment. But keep track of your progress on this assignment. Tell 3 people a day that you love them. Why? Because if you don't tell 3 people a day that you love them, you have probably wasted a day of your life. What wasted your life? This is about love. Even the ones that are hard to love for you, whoever that is, it looks different for each and every one of us in this room, right? But make sure that when you tell 3 people a day that you love them, don't pick them from your easy list. You know, oh yeah, to come home and tell Tricia I love you. Oh, that's nice, yeah. You know, she probably wants to see it more than she wants to hear it. But you know, sometimes we need to hear it. We're all different. But and sometimes that person that needs to hear that they are loved by you might be you in the mirror. Who knows? But make sure that at least one of those people that you say I love you to don't look like you. They don't look like you. They might not have your orientation. They might not even have your politics. They might have voted for someone that you're resentful at. You know, resentment's the #1 offender. Kick that shit to the curb, man. You know? Whoever it is, dump it. Dump it quick. If you don't, it might throw you away. You can think what you want, but don't be resentful over it. Don't judge over it. Our country is addicted to judgment. Break that addiction by telling people that you love them. Replace the addiction with love. You have to displace it in that way. Nothing else works. And so as you're telling 3 people a day, look for someone that makes you scared to say that to. I remember walking home maybe a month ago, and 2 blocks away, you know, I just had this feeling in my heart and spirit, you know, I call it the Holy Spirit, told me I was supposed to tell this woman in a wheelchair that I love her. And I got scared right away. I don't know her, you know, it's like, and I want to get closer and closer and closer to her, you know, I'm hoping that she'll like drive away in her wheelchair and disappear before I get there, you know, but yet I want to face my fear. And I finally get there, and I walk up and I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, have you been told today that you are loved? She looked at me really like, and said, well, no. And I said, well, you've heard it now, I love you. And tears welled up in her eyes. She might not have heard that for a very long time. And guess what? There is people in our world that have maybe never heard someone who looks like you say, I love you. You know, there might be people that have not heard that in many years. Our program is about love, nothing else. And if you love someone, you won't hurt them. And if you love someone, you will also serve them. So today, be the reason someone feels loved. Be the change you want to see, as Gandhi said. And guess what? I ain't going back to daycare. Why? Because I feel loved. As long as presence of love is in my life, I don't want to do those destructive, painful things to myself and others. You know? So we forgive, notwithstanding the temperature of our hearts. And you want to take a picture of the front of my business card. There's my email, if you want to get a hold of me. My phone number, feel free to text or anything. My website is on the very top, Cameron-Communications with a Z, because somebody took the S, I don't know, the audacity of some people. And, .org, because I didn't know the difference between net, org, and com at the time, so but anyway, that's what it is. And so, like I say, if you love someone, you won't hurt them, and if you love yourself, you won't hurt yourself, and if you love someone, you will serve them. And on that note, I just want to say thank you for letting me serve you today.